That's
Hello, hello, hola, hola a todos. Hello, this is Christian
hola, hola.
Londaeta on my YouTube channel, and we have two very, very special guests today from a band that I really love. From the very first time I ever heard them, that was, I think, in the early or middle 80s, when I started reading about other bands like IQ, Palace, Pendragon, Marillion, and etc. And in Chile, it's not very easy to get a hold of records by these type of bands. But then I got a hold of a copy of Root Politics, and I was really very, very finely impressed. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can. We just
we can. There was a thing came up on screen.
Couldn't see you for a second.
No problem. Okay. So welcome, Mr. Mark Holliday and Mr. David. David, can you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm David.
David Powell.
David Powell, of course. You've been the nucleus of this incredible project that has a special story. It was difficult for me to choose questions because I had so many, but I just wanted to let you know that back in 1989, I became the music director of a radio station called Futuro, which is Future FM, belonging to a bigger station here that was the leading station in FM pop radios. And then I had the chance to play whatever I wanted. And it was a radio station destined to play special music, different music. So I specialized in progressive rock, electronic music, alternative pop, etc., classic rock as well. So Castanarc eventually ended up being part of our playlists. And some of the songs that I chose from the album were USURPIA, How Beauty Attracts the Beast, and The Axe in the Grove, which is my personal favorite from that one. It still makes me, it touches my soul, really. It's an amazing song. And then, to be honest, I later got a copy of the Journey to the East album, but then I lost track, and I must confess that I forgot about searching for information about the band. So I suppose that before this contract with RCA, you were doing this Island Love. That was back in 1989 as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
This Island Love, yes.
And that sounds like a much pop-oriented type of piece.
Yes.
And, yeah. What were you doing later on Journey to the East?
Journey to the East was the first album. And with the first album, we had a full band around us.
That's true.
And slowly but surely, the band kind of split up after that. And David and I carried on, and we were only able to carry on because of our a friendship with John Spence, who was the radio. He was the studio engineer who we worked with, and we've known John now it seems like all our lives, and we love the man to bits and got absolutely every respect in the world for the man. In fact, if you're doing an interview really with David himself, it should be with John as well, because John is as big a part as we are. I'm merely seeing.
He produces all the.
Yeah, I read about that. In fact, I was going to suggest that you could invite him for this meeting, but maybe next time. I wanted to take you back to the memories you may have of the Transic days. I know that I read that you were supposed to be schoolmates. Is that very old?
Very distant.
Sorry.
It was when we were at school.
We met at school.
Yeah.
We were in the same class, David and I.
How old were you? How old?
We met about 11.
Yeah, we were about 11.
We were 11
when we first met.
Wow.
And I've known him. He's sick to back teeth of me. I'm sick to back teeth of him. We've known each other for a very long time. And when I was at school, I never really hung around with David at all, and he never hung around with me. In fact, he avoided me like the plague. And I think I also him. But for some reason, I'll let him tell, because he tells the story better than I, because I was invited to join him rather than the other way around.
We were very young, so my cousin started wanted to be in a band, and the band eventually became Transic, and
he was a drummer.
My cousin was a drummer, and we started off as a 6-piece band, and we went out and played some pretty big places, I think, for just a band that started out. And we didn't write any music at that time. We were just learning our craft, and we'd be 16 years old. And then for one reason or another, the singer, I think he went back to South Africa. He was from South Africa. And then my cousin also knew Mark. He heard him singing one day to a record and invited him along for an audition. So Mark then joined. And of course, I knew Mark from school anyway.
I think his reaction when I turned up that day
God,
was,
not him.
"Oh no!"
It was a bit like that. But we've got on ever since. And then with Mark wanted to write our own music. So the band remained Transic while we carried on playing gigs.
Well, the band,
It changed its name once.
I gave the name
Transic, yeah.
Transic
Yeah.
to the band. So you weren't called Transic before then.
No, but
What were you called?
I've no idea.
I have no idea. Never.
Can't remember.
You're bringing up new things that we didn't know.
So when we got a record deal with Peninsula, was it?
That's right, yeah.
Peninsula Records for the first album, which was Journey to the East. We'd written most of Journey to the East between us.
Well, it was written, but it was we were kind of gigging, as it were, so we were going round, and the majority of the songs that we'd already had when we went into the studio, so we were quite relatively well rehearsed when we went in, and when we went in, we found that we were was it 2 songs or 1 song?
One song light.
1 song light. So we wrote a new song, David and I, and that was the title track. So we wrote Journey to the East, the title track.
And we changed the name of the band.
And we changed the name of the band there. And I remember sitting in your house, and all the members of the band were sat in the house, and we were all pulling his hair out. What can we call ourselves?
As you do.
Then you finally came out with Castanarc. To be honest, I've been trying to find what it means. What is Castanarc? What is it?
I just stood up and I went, Castanarc, and that was it.
Look at that.
That was it.
It makes sense. Right.
Castanarc. 3 separate words, I think, but it was 1 word right from the start.
Yeah. I thought this must be some city from some mythological places.
No.
No.
But I can understand you thinking that.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't.
It wasn't.
Now, what went on? Why did the band split after the first album? Because it's not very usual that a band splits up after the 1 album.
We didn't think. I think we released it, and I don't want to go into too much of it, but we released it, and we got no feedback from the record company at all. We didn't know what had happened to it. It just came out. And I think a few band members became disillusioned because we got no feedback from the record company at all. As far as we were concerned, it did nothing. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that we found out it actually become quite well known.
John Spence, he was is gone.
Okay.
That's the very fellow. John Spence. What he did was he was friendly with a drummer from another band, and that drummer happened to be he was in the sort of what will we call it, the management area of Peninsula Records, and he found out lots of things that we didn't know. Now, at that time, the band had already split up because we'd heard absolutely nothing, And so David and I, we've never split up. We will never split up. We're family, Dave and I. We've known each other since, as we already explained, since we were 11. So I can't see David and I ever splitting up. But what we will do is we'll continue writing all the time. But I'm digressing.
So once we found out that it had got legs, it had actually, people had bought it, and people, not necessarily in England. I don't think many people in England knew it was out, but it had certainly, he found fan mail from Brazil and Japan and Europe.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. You know, Genesis, I heard that Genesis they got the big hit in Italy, not in England. It seems that the British band not always get the support from British people. I don't know why.
That seems to be the way of it. For some reason, we're big in the Netherlands. For some reason, don't know why. Don't know why.
I did find a very long review of, I mean, all your work, all your discography by a Dutch guy, and I learned some things there. In fact, in those days, I think that there were bands like, you know, Marillion, Tamarisk Haze. Was it easy to? Oh, my question should be: was it easy to become meaningful on radios, in the media? What, I don't know, because there were so many of them coming up all at the same time, if you know what I mean. Because somebody pronounced progressive rock dead, and then you know, many things happened in music. But then in the early 80s, this big bunch of bands appeared. So what produced that? What happened there?
I don't know. I think we were doing our own thing. I don't think we were really. In fact, I didn't listen to music on the radio, and this is going to stung me in the backside a bit. But I didn't listen to music on the radio until I missed the 80s completely.
Oh,
so I did just because it was a when I was writing, or when I sit down to write, I got it into my head that I didn't want any outside influences. So I would sit down and just write what I wanted, what I liked. So that really became, I suppose, what became labeled as neo-prog.
Yeah.
But this was 83. We were writing.
I mean, that label was that label.
Where that came,
that was after Peninsula Records.
Yeah.
And after everything, and we all of a sudden found that we were carried along on that wave. But we certainly didn't write for it, and we certainly didn't. We just wrote what we felt like at the time. We were lucky enough to be able to go into a recording studio with a really good engineer and do what we did, and we're still doing that to this day.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, Mark and Dave, that if you read the definition of the band in your own, there's a website, Castanarc.com, where it says it's a prog symphonic pop band, and that's I totally agree with that definition, because that's what I get when I listen to your music. But then it's not very usual that somebody that a band defines themselves as pop and prog at the same time, though many prog bands have pop elements in the music, and that's what makes them become successful, not only in the niche of the progressive music. So I was going to ask you, what influences do you acknowledge in your music? What do you usually like to listen to before you started making music? Did you like classical music?
Do you want me to go first?
Pop?
I'll introduce you to my brother David Powell here.
Well, I got I've said this before, but I got two much older brothers than myself. So I got my dad was into a combination of jazz and classical music, opera. So he would listen to all those. So those things would be playing in the house. And then my brothers I'd be very young. I'd be 8 years old, 10 years old. My brothers would come home and put Yes on, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Curved Air and all these sorts of bands. So I had this strange mixture, and I used to we had a piano in the house. I've been playing piano since I was about 5 years old.
Oh.
And I'd try and copy it, and I'd be trying to copy all of it. So I'd be listening to Oscar Peterson and foolishly trying to do runs that he would do, And then I'd be trying to do bits of classical music, bit of this, and then I'd be trying to do a bit of Rick Wakeman or whatever. So they were the things that were. But I don't know.
Tony Banks was always a big influence.
I never listened to Tony Banks until I met you. I don't think.
All right.
I never listened to. They didn't listen to Genesis.
Learning things now.
But sorry, have you ever interacted? I don't know. I asked it out of the ignorance. Have you ever met these guys or interacted or maybe
played on stage with?
On stage, yeah.
Steve Hackett came on to. We were playing a gig, an acoustic gig actually, and Steve Hackett came into. We were rehearsing, just strumming some guitars and singing, and then he walked, and I didn't even know he was there.
Dressing room.
Sorry,
in the dressing room.
Yeah, in the dressing room, and David sort of tapped me on the shoulder, and he went like that.
Steve Hackett,
and it was Steve Hackett who was stood behind me.
So we went on. We played first. We did a couple of tracks from like probably Politics and.
We at the time the new album then was Little Gods.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of tracks off that,
and then Steve Hackett went on after.
Hmm.
And then I think Rick Wakeman was there because I remember bumping into Rick Wakeman and
Rick Wakeman and
Oliver.
Fish was there as well.
Right. Well,
and I remember they'd got some sort of telephone link. And it was an award ceremony given, and I think it was who was it? Porcupine Tree who won the award.
All right.
That night. I can't remember what year it was.
All right. Now, but you just mentioned Little Gods. I must confess that I just discovered this album not long ago, and I really became hooked by a fantastic track called "The Sun." I still can't believe it. How good it is, and I wish I still have a radio show, an online radio show. I'm planning to make a show with your music soon, but this should have become a big hit in prog oriented radios. I mean, I would be playing it all day, and there's something I want to, if you allow me to, a little criticism. How could you fade out the final guitar solo? It's fantastic. I think it dies before it should. It should have been much longer.
We'll tell Neil. He'll be. We'll not get him in the door. His head will be this big.
I think the answer to that is the truth of it was probably time.
Yeah.
Little Gods is a long album.
It's a very long album. Yeah.
And you're constricted.
It's over an hour, isn't it?
Yeah, close. It must be close.
It's very close to an hour. It's a very long album.
It was a very.
It's a concept. It's a concept album.
Very much so. Yeah. It was before all the shenanigans with global warming and the rest of it. Before it became everybody's jumped on the bandwagon of that now. But
which is what the album's about. It's about how the human race treats the earth, really. And you go through a thread. You meet the sun, the moon,
the sun,
the rivers,
the trees, oceans.
It tells a story in that way.
And it starts from the top and comes down like that, all the way through. And then there are the short sections of the little link pieces that you get from moving. It's about a character that meets all these characters. And as he's doing so, he's falling through the air, and he's falling through, he sees the sun, he sees the moon, and so on, until eventually he gets to the sea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I've always found some like a spiritual inspiration in your songs, in your lyrics. There's one particular song, I'd say that's my number one by Castanarc. It's The Axe in the Grove. I still feel so touched by it every time I play it, and I was lucky enough to play it on the radio, and I was going to ask you something. How do energies and moods divide regarding this pop identity, this melodic side of Castanarc, because you also have a darker, more dramatic and reflexive and melancholic side of the music. How did you decide when you're making the final list of songs for an album? And I'm not a musician, so this question comes from a music lover. How do you separate energies, and how do these energies end up meeting in a composition? It's a strange question, I know.
We don't have one way of working, except to say that we've always sat at a piano, an actual piano, and he stood at the side of me.
And that's how we write.
And we write, generally speaking,
we've written like that all our lives.
We write like that.
Ah.
The idea is how the albums are put together, because we're working on one now, and that's different again. They're all different. So none of them are done in the same way.
At any time, we have never, ever worked the same way on any album ever. We've always, and I wouldn't say we've progressed. I would say we just do it differently. We come at it from a different angle. So I remember one time particularly when we were doing Rude Politics, which Accident Grove is part of. We were working with a computer, and that was
hilarious.
Well, it was hilarious because nobody ever did it. We were having to ring up. Well, John was having to ring up. He was having to ring up and say things about. We were trying to find out, how do you do such and such, and we were having to ring Yamaha up. And then for them to fish around, and then for him to say, you need to use the word dal segno, stupid things like that. And we were finding out. So we were right at the cusp, without knowing that we were right at the cusp. Right at the cutting edge. And ever since, we've always tried to do things differently.
On a spiritual side, especially Rude Politics, it is a concept album as well, but in a slightly different way to, say, Little Gods. Mark came up with a great big spread of lyrics that he'd written this story based on Welsh mythology, and
it was based on a book called the Mabinogion, which is a series of Welsh tales told from the 6th century AD. They're really old, and it's from there.
And then Mark says, "Here you go, write some music to that."
In that case, you came out with the lyrics first, and then you
on that occasion, yes.
How interesting!
But that doesn't happen all the time. But it did on that occasion.
Now, why and when did Arc became Axe? Because it was so confused.
It was always Axe. It was a misspelling. It was spelled on the
RCA Victor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Typo.
Yeah, and there's something else about that. Why 3 different covers? I've seen 3 different. Well, you have the RCA Victor one, and then I have seen 2 of them.
Because different releases, surely.
Yeah.
Purely because it was different releases.
We never liked the first one.
Okay.
So RCA somebody was in control of that.
Okay.
And
we were taking, the control was totally taken out of our hands. Whereas now we have absolute control over everything we do.
Yeah.
And artwork, everything.
The absolute responsibility as well, which is,
True enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how easy was it to get, did you get any support or promotion on radios back in those days when you were with BMG?
Only with This Island Love, because when we released This Island Love, which is, as you've said, is a more poppy thing, that got played on BBC Radio 2 here, which is quite a big radio station.
And it was made Record of the Week. What was it?
I can't remember.
Not Simon. Oh, I can't remember the name of the
Richard Skinner.
Richard Skinner.
Of course, Richard Skinner, very well known.
And he basically put us into. We went down to Maida Vale Studios in London, and we recorded. We took a band down and recorded. We recorded at 2 places because the Maida Vale studio was being refurbished, And so we ended up in, where was it?
John knows. I can't remember the name of it.
It was
a big studio.
It was where Roxy Music did, what was that, their famous album? Slave to Love on.
Yeah,
all right. Okay.
It
was there,
and that was for Radio 1. So they did the broadcast for Radio 1 from that song.
But you didn't have any official singles, did you? You never had.
That was the only official single we had.
Okay.
That came out.
Yeah, we've never been a single band, really.
No.
You know, somehow I felt when I first heard USURPIA, that was a song, because it was catchy. It was not too long for a specialized radio station. So this the Sun for me is a mega candidate for a single song, if you know what I mean. It's my own feeling, you know.
For me, the one on that album is The River. I always had a.
Okay.
I always thought The River was quite. It's not my favourite track, but it was more in that genre.
Okay.
Well, I'm with Christian. I always like the. I like the Sun. I like the Sun, but I like. There's quite a few. I like the Moon. I always like the Wind as well. I like the Wind.
It's a very busy album.
It is busy.
You know,
on it.
What happens to me with the Sun is such an optimistic feeling in the song. And why do you laugh? You don't agree?
I laugh because I remember. I don't remember much, but I remember the first meeting I had with Mark for this album, and in particular, and he came with this story. And I remember we had one attempt at doing the Sun, and I remember saying to him about the concept of that album, and saying to him, "This is all great, but why don't we put some humour into it? Why don't we make it funny as well? So give it a twist, because it can be also pathetic. You can have pathos in it and a bit of irony, but humour can also be cutting as well." And the Sun is particularly. It was the first one that we put that humour and that.
You really have to listen to the lyrics. The lyrics, it's all in the lyrics.
Yeah. The humour's in there, the uplift's in there, but the subject matter is definitely not humorous.
But by the way, I'm sorry, Dave and Mark. I'm getting a message here that my connection is going to end up in 10 minutes. So they are pushing me to upgrade. So let's see if we can go on for 9 more minutes, and then we can connect again if you still have the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what about Khepra? Is that Khepra Records? I know that it's your own label. What happened with that? You decided not to deal anymore with any record labels? I mean,
no, because of I think when we signed to RCA, and then the politics went off with RCA and BMG, and then I think BMG just it's well catalogued, I think, in the annals that they got rid of nearly every artist worldwide going. Did BMG?
I think they kept about 1 or 2%. That's all they kept.
It's a ridiculous amount. When BMG took over RCA,
it was around the time that we actually signed as well.
Yeah, it wasn't far after that. So we didn't want to. We went through that, and we thought we didn't want to be beholden to anybody. Then we thought, right,
let's be our own masters.
We just want to sit down. We enjoy writing. We're lucky to have a great studio and an engineer and some fabulous musicians that we've learnt to. That love playing with us, and we love playing with them, and they all dip in and out. And so that's why Khepra came about.
And how many copies did RCA usually press of one album like Root Politics?
No idea.
No idea.
No, I couldn't tell you that.
Oh,
I don't know what the pressing. I don't know what the pressings for.
Okay.
Root Politics were.
All right. Now you mentioned John Spence, who was very kind in helping me make the contact. As a third party, I imagine that he's very important in the creative process of the album.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
John puts the things, well, we
John has the expertise that John has. I have an area of expertise that John doesn't and David doesn't. David has an area of expertise that I do not and John does not. And then John has an area of expertise that us two don't. And it kind of dovetails and gels together quite well. So we're, in many ways, we're quite fortunate because of that.
Were you any of you formally trained? I mean, sorry, did you ever go to music school? Did you study?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yeah, I studied music.
Okay. How? Tell me about it, please.
I just lessons. I was doing lessons at 5 years old and exams and things like that, and then just progressed through Royal School of Music.
All right.
So just their examination board and choirs and all that thing that you go through at schools and choir practices. John must have played in bands, and he's a bona fide engineer as well. So
I'm just a singing enthusiast.
and painter.
Oh yeah,
let me tell you that, Mark, is not because we are, in this direct connection. I find your voice one of the most incredible voices in this area of music. Because
Would you like to write my CV?
Now, some people say that you sound similar to John Anderson, but I don't agree with that at all. I think it's all very different. But I think that your voice suits every single piece you've made, even those, the popish sounding songs and the more, melancholic songs, especially those ones. So it's really, what I'm trying to say here is I wish that more and more people knew Castanarc and appreciated Castanarc. Well, I think there's a comeback. There's a growing interest in recent years. Maybe because of the pandemic, bands began playing things, making music together, and people started developing a feeling of needing to see bands or to hear bands. The pandemic has been terrible to all of us, but it did something good. At the same time, it's difficult to analyze. What do you think?
It made us.
Yeah. I think that's the feeling at this end as well.
Yeah, it made us get on with the last album that we did, which was Sea of Broken Vows. That came together very quickly. It was probably the easiest album I've been involved with to do because it was just because we were closed down. Everybody in the world was closed down, and you just had to get on with it. And we had to find a way to work between the three of us when we couldn't meet. Yeah. And that album came together very quickly, so very productive.
And I don't think that you like to compare one album with the other, but my feeling is that all of your albums have this very good balance of, as I was saying before, like shiny, optimistic feelings, and then more reflexive pieces.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
I think at the end of the day, Christian, what I think we all do, well, David and I do, is we just write them. And we don't write them, I suspect, or I certainly don't, with any purpose. We just write them for the enjoyment of writing them, and hopefully somebody out there will like them and see something in them that perhaps we either never intended or we just don't do it, do we? We just don't do it.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You don't have a plan to do it this way or that way.
Not really, no, no.
Yeah.
We have a love of music.
We do have, well, some of the concept albums definitely had plans. But you don't go into that plan and think, right, this album's going to sound like this, or it's going to sound like that. In fact, we'd go out of our way to make every one different, really. So you will get some tracks that I think, well, the most atmospheric track is the one you've already mentioned, probably The Axe in the Grove. And I can remember having a definite, I remember where the inspiration came for that sound came from.
Where is that?
Which was unusual. It was a film I saw. I can't remember the film, but it
was Crocodile Dundee.
It probably was
Crocodile Dundee of all things.
And it got a drone right at the end, a didgeridoo. And there was a didgeridoo right at the very end, and it just went on forever. And I just thought, crikey, we could do something with, synthesize that and make it, give it some so that when it lifts, when it has this uplifting moment, it really bursts out. And of course, the lyrics were already written, and it just fitted a treat. It worked really well.
When we were in the recording studio, particularly the vocals, I remember this because I was involved. When we were there, we did it in an unusual way. What we did was we took an expensive microphone and we set it up in the control room of the recording studio, and I sang it incredibly quiet. I had to do because of the speakers in the room, and so that's why it was so quiet,
so intimate.
So it was sung there, really in your face. So when you hear it, you think, you know, it's me there, but without the smell, as John used to say.
And there's this fantastic sort of effect of the train going that you devised. That was great. This is no lyrics. This is sound you make. It was you, I guess, Mark. This is like
the backing vocals.
Yeah. It's a sort of effect.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. And we tracked it all up.
Yeah.
And in fact, David just told me a story that I didn't know about. And he just told me about the very thing that you're talking about now. And it was when we were tracking the vocals up, apparently John was leaning on the recording studio with his elbows looking through his eyes, looking through like that. And he was, oh no, what am I going to do with this?
But in the
and he wants it tracking as well. Oh no.
In the end, it sounds very well. I mean, it's my opinion.
Well, I quite liked it.
Yeah. Well, I have 1 minute left, so I'm going to end up this meeting. I'm going to get back to you with a new link, if you don't mind. You still have some more time?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. So, end of part 1. See you later. Yeah.
Same link?
No, a new link. I'm going to send you a new link.
Okay.
A new link.